always the most nervous moment.
I know.
Hello, everyone. We are live. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is the final social media training, Facebook Live training of this season. We've done weekly training since the beginning of March, and this is the last one. We will have one more Zoom workshop next week, and then that's it for this year. But before we go to wrapping up the season, we have one last fantastic session prepared. And today we have Rebecca Youngs. She's known mainly as the Social Den on Instagram, and she's a social media coach supporting business owners, which is a perfect fit for us. And today we have Rebecca helping us to understand how we can use Instagram stories and IGTV to grow our community, build a community around our brand. So without any further ado, I will hand over to Rebecca.
Thank you very much, Lenka. Hello, everybody. Yes, as Lenka said, I am a social media consultant and coach. So I'm really passionate about helping businesses gain the confidence and the tools they need to market themselves on social media. And Instagram is my biggest passion. I have, in the last 18 months, built a really engaged, strong community on there. And I would say that 95% of my leads for business come through from Instagram. So it's a really great platform for me. And I hope to share some of the ways I've got there with you now. So I'm going to talk today about literally the thing that I love most about Instagram, which is how you can build a community around your brand. And you mainly using Instagram stories and IGTV. There are obviously a few other tools on Instagram you can use, but that's what I'm going to focus on. And then I will just talk a little bit about Reels towards the end. Okay, let's see if my presentation is going to work. There we go. So just a bit of an introduction about stories then. I don't know how many of you are using them. They started in 2016, so Instagram is 10 years old this week, but stories are a relatively new part of it, and they were created really to compete with Snapchat, which at the time was really becoming very popular. And Snapchat, I don't know if any of you know much about that, but it's messaging that disappears after 24 hours, which is why stories were created for just a 24-hour period. There's now 500 million daily active users though, so they are huge. And a third of the most viewed stories are actually from businesses. So for businesses, they're a really great marketing tool. And consumers say that 62% would be more interested in a brand after watching a story. So it is really great for really building confidence around your brand and exposure to your brand. Obviously, if you have over 10,000 followers, which we're all aspiring to do, then stories give you a link to your website. So you'll have seen this when you've been watching them. Some of you may be lucky enough to have that function, and you can swipe up straight to a link on your website to buy or book something. So it's a huge advantage because it's a very easy call to action for people looking at your stories to just swipe up and get going. And one thing I always say is that stories occupy what I call a prime real estate of the Instagram app. So when people log into Instagram, that's the first thing they see, the circles at the top of people's stories. And if your story has got that purple ring round saying that you've created a new story, there's so much intrigue from your audience to see what that's about. Unlike when you're scrolling through a feed and you can see an image, you can decide there and then if you want to see more or click into it. But with a story, you've no idea. You've just got that profile picture. And we're all just so nosy, we can't help ourselves to click and see. And particularly if you've built up relationships, which we're going to talk about in this session, people really want to engage with your stories every day. So it's such a great way of having a daily contact with your audience. Oh, sorry, my door just slammed. So, like I said, Instagram stories is just a really great opportunity to connect and nurture your existing followers. So one thing I will say about stories is you're very unlikely to get new people seeing your stories. It will be your existing followers that look at your stories. And I'll talk a bit later about IGTV and Reels, how they are sort of a way of reaching new followers. But for Instagram stories, it's very much about connecting and nurturing with your existing community. And you may only get a small percentage of your followers looking at your stories, but I really wouldn't worry about that, because I do. I get a probably, I don't know, 20-30% of my followers that look at my stories every day. But those 20-30% of people are my biggest fans. And so they, not only buy from me, work with me, but they talk about me on and offline all of the time. So they're like my brand ambassadors. And that's what you want to build. You want to get that community that is talking about you on and offline and recommending you to people. And that is how you will build your brand. So don't worry if your story views is 100 and you've got 1,000 followers. Those 100 people are so important. Keep connecting with them, keep nurturing them, because they will bring you great business, and really just the power of your brand will be through those people. So use stories to be very consistent, because they're quick and easy content. They're your way of showing up every day and being visible. And that is the beauty of them. They don't take lots of time to create. It's not like a reel or an IGTV video or a grid post where you've got to think about the image, think about the caption, get it all polished. They are just a really quick way of sharing some content. They're a really great chance to show the sort of informal side of your brand. So whereas on your grid, you might keep it quite polished and keep to certain themes, you can do lots more on your stories. An example of this, as just came up for me yesterday, that I was able to post a reel that I found hilarious of a lady doing eyeliner, but then completely messing it up at the end. It just made me laugh. Now that's something I would never share on my grid, but I shared it to my stories because I just found it very entertaining. And I've got so much engagement from it through my stories, with people really finding it funny too. So, there's so much content you can share there that you wouldn't put on your grid. So use it for that. And it's a way of really connecting and sharing relatable content with your audience that, again, you wouldn't necessarily want on your grid. The beauty of them is that you're building that trust with your audience. Every time you're talking to them and sharing things about your business, it's helping them get to know you and get to know the people behind the brand, and it builds trust. And people buy from people, and once they know, like, and trust you, they're much more likely to work with you or buy from you. So really use it in that way. And obviously stories are called stories because they were there for you to tell stories. So do use it for telling stories. I'm going to talk a bit more about that in the next slide. Obviously, like I said, they hang around for 24 hours, stories, but you can give them a longer life by saving them to your Instagram highlights. And do use those highlights to really showcase the key parts of your business and get your profile working for you, so that when people land on your profile, your highlights really tell them what you're about and how they can work with you. So like I said, they're stories, and obviously not every single story will have more than one slide to it. But if you are telling a story, think about it as that very first story you post needs to really hook people in. That headline, that intro needs to make people want to then scroll through and see all of your stories, not just stop and go on to somebody else's. So a great example here is it's just a recipe, but the first slide or first story was of the actual finished product, and the person is telling you that the recipe is coming next. So you're already thinking, I want to know how to make that, and click through to the next one. So think about whatever it is you're talking about. If you are going to post more than one story about that particular theme or product or whatever it is your business does, hook people in to make them want to keep watching. Sometimes it can just be giving a snippet of information and getting that intrigue going. Sometimes you could be asking a question and then answer it in the next slide. So just think about how you can hook people in on that very first slide, grab their attention. And then, you might only have a beginning, middle, and end. You might only have 2 stories, but you might have a series of stories, particularly if you're showing a behind the scenes type bit of content, or maybe if you're promoting an event. So in the middle, try and keep people active on your stories. Again, this is something I'm going to talk a bit more about later, but get them using all those interactive features so they feel they're really involved in the story that you're telling. And then just conclude it with either sort of a sign-off type goodbye story, or if you have got a call to action in what you're talking about, absolutely put it at the end. So, book now, find out more here, DM me for more details, ask me a question about it. Get people really to be really sort of involved in your stories. Now, the great thing and sort of my favorite thing about stories is that you can build relationships. The beauty of stories is that every single reaction that your audience gives you to a story, whether it's just a swipe up emoji or a message, comes straight into your direct messages. Now, lots of people are quite shy, aren't they, within social media, particularly those of us that are a bit older like me that haven't grown up with it. We don't feel comfortable necessarily commenting a lot and giving our own personal opinions on public posts. But we are very happy to just have that one-on-one relationship. And depending on the business as well, sometimes it can make us feel very special and very involved with that business. You know, sometimes I've direct messaged some quite big brands or some big Instagram accounts, and to get a reply from those people always gives you a really good feeling about that brand, that person. So do sort of really build on that. Use that to start conversations with your audience. So even if someone just swipes up with that heart emoji because they've loved your story, you know, use that to say, can you relate? You know, what do you love about it? Just start a conversation with them, and you'll find you'll get so many business leads and contacts and sales from your direct messages. Don't underestimate the power of them. I can't tell you how many bookings and purchases I've got from my direct messages, and just building up those relationships is so important. Bearing that in mind, you know, do include all those interactive elements to give people the opportunity to interact with your stories. So you've got the slider where people can just slide their emoji. You've got polls, which work really well. I would suggest using them as much as you can because they're so easy for your audience. They've just got to tap one option. They don't need to think about it. They don't need to type anything, and make it really easy. And one tip on that would be to, where you can, always offer a double positive answer. So you don't really want much negativity on your account. So if you're, I don't know, maybe if you're talking about a product, you might say, which color do you prefer? And people can just click the color. If you are talking about an event, you might say, you know, do you want to go to that event? And you might have, yes, I really do, and tell me more. So both answers are actually a positive, but it gives people a really easy way of being in touch with you and getting active with your stories. You've got questions. I would say on that people are often less likely to answer a question, although people do, particularly if it's something they're very passionate about or something that's really trending right now. I find, you know, those things are often better about something like Netflix or something a bit more sort of relevant to now rather than very personal to your business. You might find it hard to get people to really answer something personal, but definitely give them a go. And the more engaged your audience get, the more likely they are to respond to a question. Quizzes work really well. People always love to take part in those. Again, they're very easy because they're just tapping something. You know, ask people in your stories to reply to you and tell you what they think or what they're looking for or which thing they prefer. And the DM me button, which is quite new, works really well, and people can just message you. So just try and keep your stories really active and try and keep people really engaged in them by giving them opportunities to be involved. And just also remember that this happens when you are looking at other people's stories. So if you're engaging on your audience's accounts or in areas where you want your post to reach, then every time you are reacting to a story, you're opening up that dialogue in their direct messages. So it's the same effect. And both of those things, whether it's in your direct messages or their direct messages or their stories or your stories, it all sends a really positive signal to the algorithm. So if you've built up a connection in stories or direct messages with another person, it means you're much more likely to serve your grid post when you post it to that person, or you see theirs, vice versa. So it's a win-win, and absolutely just go for it because you will definitely be rewarded. So just a few mistakes that a lot of people make on stories. First of all, when people put text on, often you can't read it. And I think when you can't read the text, you kind of just lose interest straight away. So it's either too small or it really sort of blends into the image and you can't there's not enough contrast. Often you just need to put that border around it so that it stands out, and just make sure it's big enough that people can read it. And equally, don't write too much, because you can only read a certain amount, can't you, in the 15 seconds. And I know that you can sort of put your finger on to hold to read for more, but a lot of people just aren't doing it. They're looking at stories for quick content. They don't want to be reading it for longer than 15 seconds. And on that note, don't talk too much. They're designed to be 15 seconds long for a reason. And this is something I've sort of struggled with over time, because often I've, talked for a lot longer. They roll into 4 stories and I just think, oh God, that's too much. And then I will try and shorten it. So just try not to go on and on and on if you're talking. Obviously, if you're posting a few stories to tell a story, then you won't be talking in each one, and it keeps people interested. And if you are posting a few like that, that is when you really need to hook people in and get them involved by touching a button or tapping to say they agree or disagree. Do use captions when you're talking, because a lot of people will watch with the sound off, and also it makes your stories accessible to people who can't hear. So definitely do that. It's a big bugbear of mine when people are just talking, you can't hear what they're saying because you haven't got your sound on, and again, you'll just switch off. Keeping people engaged, stop them skipping ahead. So I kind of talked about that already, but just keep them really actively engaged in what you're talking about by getting them involved. And also, a lot of people don't really share stories to Facebook, and they're not as big on Facebook, but it is really worth sharing some of your stories to a Facebook page, because again, even though they're not a big thing on there, they do highlight at the front of when people go into the app. So you are just getting your page seen that bit more than you would if you didn't post them. And if you've made the time to create them in Instagram, why not share them? So IGTV is it's different to stories because it's got its own feed, and it's permanent content. It's not just 15 seconds, but it doesn't appear at the top, and you kind of have to promote it to get people to look at it. That being said, it is prioritized by Instagram, because Instagram, its biggest rival, well, it's Facebook, it's owned by Facebook, and Facebook's biggest rival is YouTube. And obviously, it's trying to do everything it can to compete with YouTube. I don't think IGTV is going to get anywhere near to YouTube. Maybe one day, but certainly hasn't yet. But it does mean that it prioritizes your IGTV content. And it also loves it because it's longer form content, and all the social media platforms are just trying to keep people on their platforms for as long as they can. So if your content does that, it prioritizes you. It's a huge way of getting your content seen more if you can get people to stay looking at your content for longer. That's another reason why things like carousel posts on grids do really well, because you're just keeping someone on your account for a bit longer than flicking through. So an IGTV video can be 10 minutes, but I would recommend keeping them a bit shorter, because again, our attention span isn't that long. And I think if I ever look at the stats of my IGTV, it really drops off after a few minutes of people watching it. You can see how much of your video people watch. So try and keep them short and snappy, keep people's attention again. Some big accounts are allowed to have 60 minutes, but the exception for all of us is if we go live, we can have a 60-minute IGTV. IGTV, I've talked about that bit. So the way that a good advantage of an IGTV is that when they do appear in people's explore page, so when you click on that magnifying glass in Instagram and you explore other content, your IGTV video can show up there, and it shows up in a much larger size than just a normal grid post, so they stand out. They also autoplay, you've probably seen that, so you can draw people in. And with that in mind, remember that you need to capture people's attention within that first 15 seconds. So, that's going to autoplay when you preview in your grid, which I'd recommend doing, because it's a great way of people seeing it. Like I said, if you just keep it within your IGTV channel, you are probably stifling how many people are going to see it. And you can also preview the first 15 seconds in your stories, which again, I'd recommend doing. But then just make sure that first 15 seconds is to the point, it's hooking people in, it's making them think, I need to watch the rest of this video. They are a really great opportunity to add value with your content. So to create some really valuable content that your audience gets great value from. So things like tutorials, tips, hosting Q&As and interviews work really well, and they're often lives, which again can really help your reach and get prioritized. And obviously everyone gets a notification when you go live anyway, so your followers are notified and might be, you know, so tempted to see what it's all about and go and click and watch it. And they're also great again for going behind the scenes, so particularly if you're at an event that's really relevant to your brand, or you've got a product launch, or you're running an event, I would say they work brilliantly for that. Again, you need to include captions, again, to be accessible and because most people have their sound off. Now, Instagram have literally just launched a new tool that means you can switch them on and they're automatic. Unfortunately, at the moment, you cannot edit them. So you kind of just got to go with whatever they think you're saying. So it's not ideal, but it's definitely better than having none. If you don't want to do it that way, you have to upload your video onto another tool and use subtitling. I use Capwing at the moment, but it's quite expensive, so I wouldn't say I'd definitely recommend that. There are a few other alternatives. There's just clips on an iPhone where you could record your video and it will do your subtitles as you're talking, and then you can edit those. So have a think about how you want to do that, but do try and include captions. It will help with your video reach. Like I said, you can now share lives, which is brilliant, because it used to be the case that you would do a live and it would be really fiddly to save it. Often it would fail to save and then it would only be there for 24 hours and you put all that effort into a live and then it's gone. And now you get the opportunity to share it to your IGTV. So that's brilliant, and I would definitely recommend doing that. I've seen a huge increase in that over the last few months. And just remember, when you do that, to create a cover image first that you can upload. And also, just for any IGTV, I'd recommend having a cover image that really encapsulates what your IGTV is about to make people want to watch it. And it'll also look great on your grid because, like I said, previewing on your grid is really important to get the reach. But often you'll see people just sort of immediately them going into their video talking, and just having a cover image will just make your grid look how you want it. I just wanted to talk about this because I know for most of my audience, this is the thing that really they struggle with, and it's the confidence talking to camera, and everyone gets scared of it and they don't want to do it. But it's so important if you want to grow your account. People will connect with you and people will keep coming back to watch you and follow you if they get to know you and feel like they know you. When I very first started out on my Instagram journey, I had loads of people just bump into me and say hello because they thought they knew me and I didn't have a clue who they were, and it was because they'd seen me so much on my Instagram that they feel like they know me, which is lovely, and that's what you want to get to. So if you are one of those people that struggles with your confidence with talking to camera, first of all, you're not alone. Everyone does. So don't feel like it's just you. One thing I often recommend is to start by using filters. So both on Instagram stories and Reels, you can use filters, and they can either just be sort of a nice flattering filter or a bit of a fun one, a bit silly. Either way, I think it just helps you feel like you're not putting yourself out there bare and helps your confidence. So maybe start by using those, and then gradually you'll get to a point where you don't really mind. Do think about your lighting. So if you're inside, if you do a 360 with your phone, you will see that some light is so much better than others. And a good lighting not only will make you feel more confident, but it also makes your video much more watchable for people. You know, people will feel like it's something they want to engage with. If you're in a really dark lighting, you know, again, it just might make people swipe on by. Being outside works really well. Obviously, you get great light being outside. And I also personally feel a bit more relaxed. I don't know why, but for some reason, when I'm sitting in my house talking to my phone, it just feels slightly weird compared to being outside. But that might just be me. Personally, when I'm walking and talking are probably my best, most relaxed stories. And I think it's because I've got other things to think about other than my talk, you know, what I'm saying, because I don't want to walk into the road or whatever. So maybe something to try. The thing you really want to do with anything to do with your social media is make the person you're talking to, your audience, whether it's in a caption writing or speaking, feel like you're talking just to them. So a way of doing this with video is to picture yourself just talking to one friend or one, your customer avatar, just one customer. Imagine yourself coming out from behind the counter of a shop and then talking to that customer. And if you can get them to feel like that's what you're doing, you're winning, because they really will become engaged with you. They get that connection. It takes practice, and you might not get there straight away, but don't worry, the more you practice, the easier it gets. Do remember that, like I said, most people don't have their sound on. So if you're one of those people like me that hate the sound of your own voice when you hear it, firstly, most people probably aren't listening, so don't worry. Add your captions so they know what you're talking about. It's the fact that they're seeing your face that's important, not that they're necessarily hearing your words. And the second thing to think about is that once you've done lots of talking stories, those people that do have the sound on are so used to your voice, it doesn't ever even occur to them. I'm sure that none of you have listened to a story and thought, well, that voice is a bit funny. It's just not something as humans we ever really think about. It's just all in our own personal heads. Remember to smile, firstly because that makes a good story. Everyone likes to see a smiley person rather than a grumpy sort of serious face, but also it'll help your confidence. You'll feel better smiling. And if you're sort of sharing your passion and telling your story, I think that really shines through and people really connect with that. So do just tell your story, share what you're passionate about, share the values of your brand, and I think that will really help you come across. And I just always like to say that I did my first talking Instagram story in January 2019, so not even 2 years ago. And I took about 30 takes. I was really nervous. I found it really cringe. I kept deleting it and starting again. And, I won't say that, it didn't take probably months for me to feel confident doing it. But now, those of you that follow me will know I just do them all the time. And I've really, don't worry about it anymore. And the only times I retake now are the fact, like I said, that I talk too long and I think, oh God, that's too long. I'll try and make it a bit snappier. So the more you do it, I promise you, the easier it becomes. So practice and just keep at it and you will find it easier. So Reels then. Reels are really new. They're like the babies of Instagram, and they only launched in August, so literally just over a month or two old. I don't know how much you know about Reels. They are either a 15 or a 30-second video, but obviously you can record shorter than 15 and shorter than 30, but you choose one or the other when you create one. They have a new dedicated feed all to themselves, and they feature on the Explore page. And I don't know if you've noticed, but they are the first thing you see now in the very big part of the top of your Explore page. So they are so good for discoverability, because my reels are popping up on people's Explore page, and I don't think any of my other, I think my IGTVs occasionally have, but none of my grid posts I don't think have ever really gone to Explore. Maybe just a couple of people have seen them, but my reels are getting huge reach. So they are a real opportunity for you to reach a new audience. But sort of a caveat to that is you obviously can't necessarily say that it's going to be, they're going to convert to followers. So people might see your reel in their Explore page, they might like it, they might, tap the heart, they may even comment on it, but they're not necessarily then going to come to your profile and follow you. So use it as a way of brand awareness, and also really think about that when you're creating your reel, because you want your reel to leave the impact on someone that they do want to come and find out more about your brand and start following you and then becoming part of your community. So you do need to have a think about how you're going to use them for your business. You can add up to 30 hashtags, which is different to stories, obviously. And actually, even though you can do that on IGTV, the hashtags haven't really proved to work that well for people discovering your IGTV, but they do work for Reels. So definitely use those. Reels is very much like TikTok. I don't know how much of you how much you know about that, but obviously everyone thinks that Instagram created them to rival TikTok because it was doing so well. But they are sort of a fun, more engaging short video than stories. And the difference with stories are that they are permanent content. So your story is there for 24 hours unless you save it to your highlight. but your reel is there for as long as you leave it on your reel feed or in your grid. I would definitely recommend adding it to your grid. You'll get loads more views. So again, you'll want to create that cover image so that your grid looks right. And also it may attract people to watch it. I had a reel that I posted yesterday, and I'm still practicing because they're also new. And with every reel I do, I learn more. And also I sort of berate myself for one little mistake. And I think my one thing for yesterday is my cover image wasn't clear enough. It's actually a bit too small. So I don't think people can really read what the reel's about, which is a shame. So it's all trial and error. You just need to practice as much as you can. I will say that the good thing about reels as well is they hang around. So I'm still getting new views on reels I published back in August. And I had a reel that I published 2 weeks ago, and at the weekend someone shared it. So someone found it and shared it a week after I'd posted it, and I got 1,000 more views that day on that reel. So there's real potential in reels. And, you know, I really would recommend you have a go with it. Like stories, it's very quick, easy, digestible content, but a bit more fiddly to create. It's just so perfect for engaging a new audience who don't already know you. But like I said, you really do want to be adding value with that content if you want them to convert to followers and leads. And the big downside with them is that there are no insights available yet. So you can only see your views and your likes and obviously your comments. You can't see how your hashtags have worked. You can't see who shared it, who saved it. That's another thing, actually, just to remind you that you can't share or save a story, but you can, unless you're tagged in it, but you can an IGTV or a Reels, and that can have, that metric is often something that people overlook. They go for the vanity metrics like likes and comments, but actually if people have saved your content or shared it, that's actually a lot more valuable. Shares particularly mean it's reaching a huge, you know, a much bigger audience, and saves means that they're really valuing your content and they want to come back and look at it again. And that means that you're really nailing your content strategy and people are getting real value from your account. So my key takeaways are that your stories are a huge opportunity to really be consistent, show up and build that trust and relationships with your audience. They're going to get to know you, like you and trust you, and that's how you're going to convert them. And that's how they're going to become, like I said at the beginning, your big fans and brand ambassadors. Use them also to highlight things you can't on your grid and to share quick new content and be consistent, showing up all the time. Use IGTV more to add value to your audience, to educate them, to advise them, or to entertain them. And then use Reels to get your account discovered and get more reach, but also, again, add value through them. Like I just said, IGTV and Reels can be saved and shared, so definitely use them in addition to stories. And just be brave. I know that, you know, it can feel quite daunting to do all of those things. But like I said, people's faces create a real emotional connection to your brand, and all of your content that involves your face will always outperform any other content. So I've rattled through a lot of that, and I know in a minute we're going to have some questions and answers, which I'm very happy to do. But I just wanted to say thank you very much for joining me and for letting me present to you. I have got 2 workshops coming up in November. The first one is getting started with Instagram with Reels. So if you have not a clue what to do about Reels, you don't know how to make one, that workshop is all about showing you exactly how it works, all the functions, and a little bit of how you can use them for your business too. And then on the 20th of November, I'm doing a content planning workshop, which is a smaller workshop. There's only 12 places on that one. And at the end of that workshop, you'll come out with a month's content plan. So if you struggle with content planning and what content to produce, then that one's for you. It's a very much a working workshop, that one. And I'm going to get that. That's why I've kept it small, because I want to be able to give people individual advice and brainstorm with them to make sure they're really happy with their content. And finally, I offer lots of training and coaching and one-to-one service, so do get in touch if that's something you're interested in, and sign up to my newsletter, because I give out lots of tips on that and give out all the latest news, but I also give special offers. So you can win free coaching, you can get discounts off my workshops, so it's well worth signing up. So you can do all of that, book the workshops, or sign up to my newsletter on my website, and the address is there. So thank you. I will take any questions now. I'm hoping that Lenka's going to put my face back on, because I can't. I don't know if you know, but I can't see you right now. I'm talking
I
to
will
you.
make this one click, and now you can see me. Yes, I'm still here. I'm watching. I'm taking notes. I'm learning. It was fantastic. Thank you so much, Rebecca. The first question is kind of relevant, especially after your call to action, because one
Yeah.
of the questions that people have asked is, how do you bring your Instagram followers to your website to pick up a free ebook, and how to use be it Instagram stories, IGTV, Reels to collect more people for your mailing list?
Okay, so the first part of that question, to get people to your website, is a couple of things you can do. So if you've got like a freebie that you want to highlight, then definitely make sure that in your bio, because you can only put that one link, can't you, in your bio. So put the link directly to that download, that freebie page, that landing page in your web link, and then make sure the text directly above it in your bio, so that'll be the last line in your bio text, is really strongly making people click on it, giving them a reason to click on it. If you look at my bio right now, I have got book your place on my Insta Reels workshop pointing down, and then the link to book that place. So you'll need to really make people click that link, give them a reason to click it. The second thing you could do is you could talk about it a lot on your stories. So you could say to people, you could even give them a little snippet, a very small picture of whatever your freebie is, and say, would you like this? And get them really involved, get them really wanting it, and then just give that call to action at the end of the story, links in my bio to download. Just sort of as a completely different thing that we're not talking about today, getting website traffic. The easiest, it's not even really social media, it's Pinterest is a way of getting your website traffic to your so Instagram is maybe not as easy, particularly if you haven't got 10,000 followers, to get that website traffic, but Pinterest that's what it's all about. So maybe think about using that too. To get more followers using, like I said, you can use Reels, definitely at the moment. I've got loads more followers recently from Reels, but like I said, you do really need to think about the content, because you don't want people to just digest the content and move on. You want to give them a reason to come and see more. And also IGTV will do the same thing. But the biggest and easiest way of getting more followers is actually to engage. So you need to think about where your audience hangs out, so the kind of accounts they're hanging out on. It would be peers that share the same audience as you, or just some big accounts, it really depends what your business is, and then start really getting your profile seen by commenting and replying to messages, comments on people's posts. And that way, apart from the fact people start to see you and wonder who you are and maybe come and have a look, they also build that connection, like we said about the algorithm. So it'll help your grid posts get seen.
Cool. We have a question from Sonia asking about the captions options that you have mentioned and how do they work?
So do you mean for IGTV, I presume? So in IGTV now, in your settings, there's an option to turn auto captions on. So that's just literally about 2 weeks old. So do that for IGTV. I use Capwing for IGTV, which is the service where you download your video, upload it onto Capwing. It generates the subtitles, and you can go in and edit them. But that, like I said, that is quite expensive. I'm sure there's others out there. I think there's rev.com. Clips is just an app on your phone that as you talk, it writes the captions. That's free. You could try that. On stories, though, just write them using the little A in the top right-hand corner.
Yeah, there are lots of options. It really depends on how much video you're doing, what it's worth, your time and money. There's alternatives like Quick, which then help you with lots of design options, help you with repurposing your videos, or Rev, where you can get transcripts, or alternatively, you can use, when you're recording a video, a tool like Otter that records what you're talking and then just take the raw file of text to turn into captions. Lots of variations. It really much depends on how much you do and what you need. Interesting question from Claire. Quite a lot. So first thing first, do you record on IGTV with an account, or is it available because you have an Insta account? Or do you create a video first and then upload?
I create my video using my phone, just my phone camera, and then I use an app called InShot for all of my video editing, which is fairly easy, a bit fiddly, you have to get used to it, but so I edit them in there. Then I upload them to Catwing to get my captions, and then I upload them to IGTV. So it's a bit of a long-winded process for me. You could just, obviously, if you go live, that will go straight to IGTV with none of that faffing. You can just have the IGTV app and record in there, but I've never personally done it that way. So yeah, I think it depends how much you're doing and kind of what kind of video it is. If it is you doing some sort of tutorial, you would probably want to record it and then edit it and add captions. Otherwise, it's quite hard for people to follow, and I think they don't stay engaged. But if it was at an event or something, you could probably quite easily do it within IGTV natively.
And there is a follow-up question. Do you post to stories, reels, and IGTV on a regular basis? And how frequently would you suggest people to post?
So I would suggest posting to stories daily. That's your place to show up all the time, and it's quick and easy. Remember, all your stories don't have to be you talking. They can be sharing other people's posts. They can be sharing pictures and just text. Like I said, you can do polls, quizzes. It doesn't always have to be you talking, but I would do that daily. Now reels, obviously, I've tried to do 1 or 2 a week. Ideally, I'd probably be doing one every day right now because I would be really growing, but I just haven't had the time to do that. And IGTV, I tend to only post 1 or 2 a month because they're quite, like I said, it's quite a long-winded process for me with all the editing. It's the editing for me that takes the time. But it depends on, that really depends on your account and your audience, because if your audience love all that content and you notice that you get loads more engagement with video content than any other, then you might want to produce more. And also you might have the kind of business where it's actually very easy, depends what you do, I think.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to, if you're just starting out, there is an element of experimenting and trying and get your hands on every one of these options and see how they work and do a couple and see what results you will get. And then it's definitely about having a plan, because obviously you created IGTV or Reel to stay on your profile for a while. You can always use them and repurpose them for your Instagram stories. Exactly. There's lots of ways of where your IGTV goes to your grid. So you already have a grid post kind of tick from your strategy, from your plan, and you can share the story. So you already have a story sorted. The same with Reels, where you can kind of share them. So I think it really much depends on with stories, because they disappear in 24 hours. You want to ideally make daily. So there's always something new and people keep coming and you're in front of their view of stories.
Yeah.
At the beginning, just have fun with it and experiment and see what works and how it works.
Just one thing, actually, I've just thought I didn't say. So with Reels, the one thing that I would say, if your business is very local and you only serve a local audience, they might not be as worthwhile for you, because what you'll find is you'll reach everyone with them, and if they're never going to ever convert to customers, that might not be worth your while. You might want to stick to IGTV and stories. And when you're doing a story, put in the hashtag of your location and put your location tag on, and you'll keep it very local.
Talking about the hashtag, Regine is asking, do you hashtag consistently on every story and reel you create?
Always on Reels, definitely. On stories, hashtags are an interesting one. So occasionally a big hashtag, like I had this last summer, with not the one just gone where we didn't go anywhere, but the one before that, when I used a Love Island hashtag, and that got 150 extra views from that hashtag. Similarly, I think there was a Dolly Parton challenge that everyone was doing about a year ago, where you put yourself different pictures for different platforms, and I used that hashtag and that got loads more views. But generally, I would say a location is really important if location is important to your business. And just a generic big hashtag on stories could work. But like I said back at the beginning, you don't often get more people looking at your stories than your audience. So it's not as important as you think it might be. But definitely on Reels, because they'll be discovered through hashtags. So people will search a hashtag and your Reel will come up like a grid post would.
Mm-hmm. Interesting question. Do you post your stories to Facebook via Instagram as well? And do you have a strategy to engage on both platforms together? And how important or not is Facebook part of your strategy?
That is an interesting question. So I do post directly from Instagram. I don't post every story. I only post ones that I think are relevant to my Facebook audience. Personally, Facebook isn't a big part of my strategy. I find it quite clunky. I don't like it as a platform, so I tend to kind of not use it as much. I'm sure that like everyone's audience is on there though, so it is something I'm trying to focus on. But yeah, I would definitely, personally, I don't create stories within Facebook just for Facebook. Some of the functionality in an Instagram story doesn't translate over. And I think sometimes some of my Instagram stories aren't relevant. And I don't think people would look through, like on Instagram, I might post 10 in a day and I'll get everyone looking at all those 10. But I think on Facebook, people, will look at one or two. So I'll just post a few. So yeah, I'd say at the moment, Facebook isn't a huge part of my strategy overall. It's something I'm looking at. I am currently upskilling in Facebook ads, so it's definitely going to become more important for me. But I think it's very much about your audience. If your audience are on Facebook, then it should definitely be very much part of your strategy. And local audiences definitely are. People are much more likely to look on Facebook for stuff going on in their local area. So again, if you're a local business, it definitely should be something you're doing.
Yeah. Victoria says that personally she can't find any examples of service-based businesses using Reels.
Oh, well, I am.
My thinking that all the social media experts and trainers and consultants I know, which obviously that's a service, are doing it, but that's unique.
I've seen sort of, there's a lot of, since the Marie Kondo thing, there's lots of home organisers, aren't there? I've seen them using it, and I've seen interior designers use it really well. But if you are looking for inspiration, two things to do for Reels are firstly to go onto TikTok. You don't have to have an account. You can just go on and have a look and search for your hashtag around your industry, and do the same on Instagram. Search on the hashtag around whatever it is you do, and they'll come up, and just see what people are doing. But I would say that lots of people are creating not that great Reels, so it is a huge opportunity to create really good ones.
Yeah, and there are a couple of people, including Rebecca, including our other Instagram trainers that we've seen and that spoke to us, and that we had some workshops with, like Pip Akram and Helen Perry at Not About a Kid, who are creating not only great reels, but because again they're social media trainers, they are doing helpful practical reels to help you not only show how they're using reels, but give some practical tips on how you can use reels in a way of connecting with your audience, and how you can use this functionality to create engaging content. So I would have a look at some of the ones that are more likely to be using it, which are definitely social media managers and consultants and experts, who definitely are service-based providers who are on this trend, and learn from them. But I'm sure there will be, Reels are new, so obviously not everyone has the time to really jump on it straight away. And TikTok is a great source of inspiration because people are doing some pretty cool stuff there.
Yeah.
I've seen like people who are lawyers. There's lots of huge community of doctors and
coaches as well. Quite a lot of coaches doing them.
Coaches. I've seen financial advisors. I've seen lots of service, like things that I was like, oh, like historians, teachers. Like there's so many ways of using Reels. Which yes, it is still a while that people who are not on TikTok and haven't seen how others are doing it on TikTok, it might be a longer learning curve on Instagram Reels. But
it's definitely a learning curve. I would say that like I said, I always think there's something I could have done better. Every one I do, I'm learning something. So yeah, don't worry if at the first few you do, you don't think, just keep going. More practice, the better.
One of the questions we've got prior to this session was, how do you share other people's content effectively in an engaging way if you're trying to build a creative community and you want to obviously give them a little bit of love and a little bit of exposure to an exchange, potentially get them as speakers to interview them and really build a conversation and community?
So all of the things I've talked about, you can do. You can share a story, so you can share a post to your story, and you can tag them in. Always make sure you tag the person in if you share a story, because they will, otherwise they don't know you've shared it, and they will get a notification that says, Rebecca has tagged you in this story. Do you want to reshare? And majority of people reshare, and it just again increases your reach, and it builds that kind of relationship between the two of you. You can also share their IGTV and their reels, so that can work really well. And I would just start, start commenting on their posts, start sharing their posts, and then get in those DMs. I've built so many relationships with people. I'm on here today because of my DMs, and with so many other people that I've never met in real life, but I've got lots of work from and collaborated with. So yeah, it's and also I would just say, just ask. So I don't know if any of you follow Pink Storm Social, but she's another connection I've made online, and she asked Sophie Ellis-Bextor the other week if she would do a collaboration, and she said yes. So just go for it, I would say.
Yeah, we had Camilla doing Instagram one-on-one talk a couple months ago. So yeah, definitely another one of those. I will make sure that I will update the description of the Facebook Live after we finish. I will add a couple of links to other social media, especially Instagram trainers that are part of our community, and where you can go and check out their reels and their advice and stuff like that. But last call for questions. Before you do so, I will just remind everyone that if they want to find out more about and work with Rebecca, then there are a couple of options. There are 2 workshops: getting started with Instagram Reels and content planning workshop. And of course, make sure to sign up to Rebecca's newsletter. I'm getting it. There's lots of good stuff, lots of good updates all the time. And obviously, I wouldn't be doing great job if I didn't do a little bit of a plug for ourselves. So I would like to remind everyone that we are planning our annual conference for November. It's the Cambridge Social Media Day 2020. It's the 3rd year we're doing an online this is the 1st year we're doing online conference, but overall it's our 3rd conference, and it will be taking place on the 17th and 18th of November. And there will be lots of great tips and tricks, and from strategic and inspirational talks to very practical hands-on workshops. We do have Instagram workshop with Pip accounts. There will be 2 hours of Instagram, but we have Pinterest talks. So if someone was more intrigued by driving traffic, then we will have Pinterest talk, and we will have LinkedIn talk, and we will have all the other talks. So make sure to grab your ticket to Cambridge Social Media Day 2020. As members of our group, you still can buy a ticket for the super early bird price. So just head over to our announcement that there is a pinned post with the code that you can get. And if you use the code, you will still get the ticket for the super early bird price. But yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you for a fantastic and very helpful session. And thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.